So, you did it. You landed the job, you walked through the door, and you are ready to get to work. But what if I told you that this corporate world you just stepped into, it runs on a completely different set of rules? You know, the unwritten ones. Let's decode them.
Oof, this quote, it hits hard, right? Because it's a truth a lot of us have to learn the hard way. We show up on day one thinking our brilliant ideas are going to be judged purely on merit, that the best argument is always going to win. But the reality? Well, it's often something else entirely.
And that right there, that is the question that unlocks everything. I mean, if the office isn't this perfect republic of ideas that we all hope for, then what kind of system did we actually just sign up for?
Okay, let's really get into it. We've got to reframe how we see the corporation. So, just for a few minutes, forget everything you know about democracy. I want you to start thinking about your company as a monarchy. Yeah, a kingdom with a king or a queen at the top, a whole royal court, and a very, very clear pecking order.
You see the disconnect here, right? It's huge. In a democracy, we're all about the free exchange of ideas. But in a monarchy, who says something could be way more important than what they're saying. Speaking up, dissenting, that's not seen as healthy debate. It can actually be seen as a threat. And loyalty? Let's just say loyalty to the throne is basically the most valuable currency you can have.
So, every kingdom is carved up into these different territories, right? These little fiefdoms. And they're all run by powerful lords who have their own goals, their own agendas. In our world, we just call them departments. And figuring out what each one wants, that's the key. Think about it. You've got the engineering guild, the inventors, always trying to build the next big thing. Then there's the marketing guild, they're the storytellers, the diplomats talking to the outside world. The financial guild, they hold the purse strings. And of course, you've got the business lords, the monarch's inner circle, the royal court, making the big strategic calls. And here's the kicker. They're all competing for resources and the monarch's attention.
Okay, so how do you navigate this royal court? How do you survive, let alone get ahead? You have to master the invisible rules, the stuff nobody ever writes down in the employee handbook.
First thing to remember, culture flows from the top down. And the number one rule, what is important to my boss is important to me, period. But you also got to be smart. Ignore the big fancy posters about our values and just watch. Who's actually getting promoted? Is it the person with the groundbreaking idea or the one who's just really good at looking busy? That difference tells you everything.
And let's be super, super clear on this next point. That work computer, your company email, those instant messages, they're not yours. Not really. They are all scrolls that belong to the kingdom. And believe me, they can be read by other people at pretty much any time.
No, this isn't just paranoia. An executive's assistant might be screening every single email. The system admins, they can pull up literally anything from network backups. And yeah, some companies even install software that tracks every single thing you do. In the kingdom, privacy, it's just an illusion.
And this quote, it just nails the most important currency in the kingdom. When a leader is completely swamped, they don't have time to double-check every little fact. So what do? They fall back on what feels safe. They fall back on trust. A loyal advisor who's maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed might get picked over a brilliant person who challenges them.
So, if the monarch is just relying on a few trusted people, how do they actually know what's going on in the rest of the kingdom? Well, the scary answer is, a lot of the time, they don't. Not the full picture anyway.
There's this idea called keyhole management. Picture this. The executive isn't seeing the whole landscape. They're peering through a tiny keyhole. And the view they get, it's been carefully chosen, filtered, and polished by the few people who have their ear.
And that's exactly why bad news has such a hard time traveling up the ladder. You know the story. A problem starts small. The manager, they're afraid they'll get blamed, so they kinda smooth over the details in their report. The monarch gets report after report saying everything's great, right up until the whole thing collapses. They're completely surprised, but really, the failure was predictable from the start.
I mean, this analogy just says it all, doesn't it? At the end of the day, people are looking out for themselves. Nobody wants to be the one to announce there are slimy things under the rocks in their garden, especially not when their job is on the line.
So this entire system, this monarchy, this loyalty, this filtered information, it all leads to this massive, dangerous conflict that sits right at the heart of pretty much every modern company.
You know, J. Robert Oppenheimer understood that real, true progress demands total freedom to question everything, to poke holes in accepted ideas. Science and innovation, they just can't breathe when they're under rigid control.
So how on earth does that fit into the structure of a kingdom?
And this is the whole thing right here. On one side, you have what the company needs to survive long-term: innovation, disruption, uncomfortable truths, usually delivered by some passionate troublemakers. But on the other side, you have what the leader needs to rule day to day: stability, predictability, good news, and loyal courtiers who just follow orders. These two things, they are in a constant state of war.
Because at the end of the day, it's the troublemakers. It's the people who just can't stand the way things are, the ones willing to risk it all to point out the truth. They're the ones who push companies and all of humanity forward. They are the heretics who end up saving the kingdom from itself.
So that leaves you with one last question to ask yourself as you head into your own corporate kingdom tomorrow. Every organization needs both loyalists and malcontents to work, but all real progress depends on just one of them. So which one are you?